Hey, we are live, and it's going to be so great that I have Max Amond, the TeachMeet giant, who is here to give us some things that we need to know about TeachMeet. Welcome, Max. Uh, Hello, Max. Hope
Hi,
you're not
John.
mute.
Hi, John. Good
Yeah,
to see you and good to
exactly.
see everybody.
Yeah, I was part of TeachMeet at the MIT conference in 2018, and it was really a fantastic one. So, yeah, I do love to know about the journey so far, and what's the next thing that you have on your slips going forward. So, thank you, Amond. I'm going to bring up your presentation back, and you can go ahead and start.
Thank you. Thank you, John. I'm back to my presentation, and I called it Teach Meet, the story so far, because there's two parallel stories, the story of Teach Meet and then perhaps the story of what I've been finding out about Teach Meet, because I was involved in it very heavily and then couldn't figure out why it was working so well and decided I would do a PhD in Trinity College in Dublin. Started that. I'm starting my 5th year part-time in that. And this is where I'm from. I'm from Ireland. I live on the border between, you can see the tiny dot there, between the south and the north of Ireland. And just across the way from there is where TeachMeet began. I don't know where in the world everybody is who are listening. I know that John has been at a TeachMeet. He's from Nigeria, and we've had TeachMeets across the world. I'll show you in a minute. So what is it? It hasn't been defined. It isn't incorporated, but one way to explain it is that it's a peer organized gathering for teachers so that they can share and discuss ideas in a social, convivial setting. The first one took place there. You can see that Jolly Judge. That's a pub in Edinburgh in Scotland. That's where the first one took place, when 3 guys who knew each other online wanted to meet face to face and discuss education. Ewan McIntosh, John Johnston, and David Noble. But now, 14, 15 years later, it's become a global phenomenon. It's a non-hierarchical thing. There isn't any sort of teachmeet.org anywhere. And there are events taking place up until now, face to face, almost across the world, not everywhere. There's a shortage in the global south, and perhaps we might prompt a few people today. And they have moved increasingly online, of course, since March 2020, and I'll come back to that later on. But the operational basis for it, that's my wording, the operational basis, goes right back to Harrison Owens from the 1980s, his open space technology deconstruction of the conference, or what people now call an unconference. It wasn't called it then, but people often refer to TeachMeet as an unconference. And there is only one absolute rule, and the absolute rule was called then the law of 2 feet, probably now better known as the law of mobility. And really, if at any stage you're not thriving and you're not enjoying what's happening, or you're not contributing, freedom without judgment to get up and move away and find someone to talk to, have a cup of coffee, whatever it might be. And even here within the Teachathon, we have that freedom. We can switch off. We can switch to another breakout room. We can turn our screen to a picture of ourselves and go do the ironing, whatever it might be. So it's very much a come and go as you wish form of gathering, as opposed to the sit in your seat and accept delivery form of gathering. This is a thing I built when I was looking into it first. I built a timeline. There is an interactive live version of this at the address there. And John, I leave you with the slides if people want to use them and find this. So it slides across the screen and starts here with the idea of Pekakucha, the fast, short delivery. Barcamp was very, very influential in Ewan McIntosh's head when figuring out how to rock the TeachMeet at the beginning. Ignite sessions as well. And we've listed here the first TeachMeets in different countries and how they evolved and moved across the world. Might be of interest for somebody who's trying to get the idea to bring it to their own to their own area. It's called Tiki Talkie. I don't know who thinks of these names; they're awful, but it's there at that link. The Unconference that I mentioned is really important, and for those who like old 70s TV, I call this my dad's army slide, but the Unconference world of open space technology, Pechakucha, Barcamp, enabled by the social media world. It's no coincidence that TeachMeet and Twitter are twins. They both were born in 2006. Anyone you speak to about TeachMeet, most people you speak to about TeachMeet entwine it in their head with Twitter. There's a hashtag TeachMeet, hashtag TeachMeets, where you can almost find a linear history of TeachMeets going right back to the first hashtag TeachMeet, I think, went on the timeline about 2007. So there's a strong tie-in with social media. TeachMeet did start as a kind of a techie paradise place where techies could meet and discuss. Now it's every form of pedagogy, skill, and technical chat can take place at a TeachMeet. But if you look at the strange font in the logo of the name, you can rearrange it to say at TechMeet. I learned that recently and it was interesting to me. But now the way even the word is pronounced, TeachMeet, the teacher and the teaching is the central part of it. So how do you know you're at a TeachMeet? So it's an informal social gathering. These are the words used by people to describe it: open, flexible, agile, peer-to-peer. Very, very adaptive and flexible throughout the evening, maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours. Some people would run them like an ed camp across a day. There's a lot of intersection between ed camp and TeachMeet that I'm not dealing with here, but it's looking at the same cohort of people looking for the same peer organized professional development. The presentations bring a lovely word into the language: nano presentations. Classically 2 minutes or 7 minutes. It's very interesting to watch someone get up and say what they want to say in 2 minutes. And I've seen some incredibly brilliant nano presentations that make you want to learn more, but for the moment, 2 minutes is okay. The most important difference between TeachMeet and formal CPD, I think, is the time built in. And this is what Harrison Owen built into open space technology: the in-between conversation, the interstitial space where people can find each other and ask each other, tell each other, share, discuss something that happened in class yesterday or a problem that they have. Which means the next point, presenters are practitioners. That's really, really central to TeachMeet. People are classroom practitioners and they're bringing themselves out of the class to look for inspiration from others and share their best moments with others. Like this teach-a-thon, there could be optional breakout sessions. We call them soapboxes in Ireland. They get different names in different places, but it's not all everybody sitting listening together for the whole evening. We'll have a stage where we may have 4 volunteer speakers or 4 volunteer demonstrators to show something in a corner of the room, and the law of 2 feet then comes into play again. I can walk to one of them and stay there for the session, or I can run around and try and get to everybody. And a really important part that I find looming large in the world of TeachMeet is the MC, the empathetic MC. And having listened to Karen and John for the morning, I'm hearing that empathy and the ability to read the room and see what's happening, and that's quite an important part of TeachMeet. And one of the founders, Ewan McIntosh, likens it to the MP at a session in a pub or a hotel where there's music going on informally, but somebody ties threads through the evening. Now, I have a very short podcast, 3 minutes explanation of what it's like to be at a TeachMeet linked here. And again, if John shares the slides, you'll be able to it sort of takes you through a step by step. There's a photograph that Martin Burrett took in 2010. Bet TeachMeet would be the biggest one, I think, not numbers wise, but classically and in historical terms, probably one of the most important TeachMeets, because it took it to a huge audience. And the Bet show in London, the electronic or the educational technology show, brings people from all over the world, and lots of people have come to Bet, joined in the TeachMeet, and gone home and organised their TeachMeet. I met it in a similar situation at the Scottish Learning Festival, and my immediate reaction was, I want one of these, and I got one, or several, or more. In online conversations, I found when I went up and down the internet that people who went to a TeachMeet and then said online on social media, I was scraping social media everywhere, in blog posts, Twitter, Facebook. These are the kind of situations they were comparing TeachMeet with. They were calling it their continual professional development, their personal learning network. Some people say professional learning network, or their community of practice. And that stayed in my head, and that became part of my research. And when I put a survey online and 302 people answered, you can see the heat map there. Some people see it as just one or the other, the blue parts of the heat map, but a lot of people see it in the intersection between a PLN and a community of practice, or as part of their professional development. And some people see it as something completely different outside of all that. And I now face a winter of analysing that data in more detail. So maybe, John, at the next Teachathon, I'll come back with some findings. In 2016, after 10 years, to celebrate the 10th anniversary of TeachMeet, at the Bet Show, Ewan McIntosh invited people to relay or respond to a survey about how TeachMeet had had an impact on them in its first 10 years. And 60 people came back with the stories of their lived experience of TeachMeet, and I inherited the job of analysing it. And the analysis, the findings, showed that they were reporting the impact in the same language that the literature about professional development would speak. The practical, relational, emotional, transformational effect, and the effect was on the self, the classroom, their career path, and their community. And what they valued most, what shone through in the 60 responses, what shone through was that the word sharing, and that's coming through again and again, was the most important thing. Not I give to you or you give to me. We share between us, a reciprocal arrangement. The passion and the inspiring effect of one teacher on another when they speak, like what we're hearing in this 24 hours online in the Teachathon, very much so. And what people really, really valued was the chance to connect, the connections made, and lifelong friendships that were made. So whether you call that community or network, it sort of yo-yos between the two. But that was a really, really interesting exercise for me as a so I'm 61, I'm only learning to be a researcher now, but to do this exercise was really, really valuable for me, and brought out some really, really telling findings. And if you want to read it, it's a 20-page booklet. There's a link to the copy here. It's hanging on my blog at the moment. It's an open Creative Commons PDF booklet. Anyone can download it, use it as they wish, and just attribute to the community, and that would be good. The 2020 survey that I've been doing, I've been observing TeachMeets, I've been surveying TeachMeet participants, and I've been interviewing TeachMeet organisers. And really, that's what I've been doing for the last 9 months. And just literally have desk load, computer load of data to start looking into. But I can say, just without any argument, that when I have observed the TeachMeets since January, started at the end of January, finished the last one in August, there's definitely a divide of almost two types of TeachMeets that I am seeing. Some that are what I described earlier, a very flexible, random set of presenters sharing. And then some are more TeachMeet style, but in a more rigid frame. Each of them have been a joy to observe and be at, but I'm tending, and I'm using quotation marks there, to see TeachMeet style and TeachMeet as almost a divergence in the evolution of TeachMeet. But one thing I do like, COVID appeared and did the stay at home to us all in March, halfway through, just literally a guillotine came down halfway through my schedule of observations. And I thought, oh, I'm sunk, I'm finished, this is not going to work. But it did, because immediately the hunger to speak to each other flipped TeachMeets to online, and TeachMeets began to use the space like Karen and John are using it here. I've seen TeachMeets in Teams, Jitsi, StreamYard, YouTube, Collaborate, Google Meet, everywhere. Every online platform I have seen used for people to get together. And the key spaces in the online are the chat space and the breakout space. The breakout space like we're using now, and the chat space in the dynamic chat window in the YouTube space. People are finding their way to those, and I've seen some of the most dynamic chat space conversations that I wouldn't get to hear over here at a face-to-face TeachMeet. So it's interesting that the hunger for talking to each other is there, and the hunger for the love to feed, the hunger to wander about the space is there, and it can be accommodated in online. So as we move onwards, it's funny that TeachMeet, which began as, oh, we only know each other online, we want to meet face to face, has been turned back on itself, but perhaps not to any detriment. I look forward to seeing what's in the data and how it plays out, but I'm optimistic. The other piece of emergent finding that I will share is when in the survey, and some of you may have done the survey was open, online, open to all participants. It was anonymous, but when you look at the question there was a question that asked why participants attended a TeachMeet in the beginning, why they presented, why they would organize a TeachMeet. These are just a flavor of the big answers that came out, and the emboldened answer is the biggest answer. And if you look at the data analysis, you can get a word cloud. To attend a TeachMeet for the first time, curiosity was the biggest. It was way ahead of everything else. I was curious. I'd heard about it. It was part of a conference that I was attending anyway, so the Unconference effect was working very strong. And it really was about finding friends, learning interesting ideas. And yes, people were calling it part of their professional development. And that's an interesting conversation as I go ahead. The reason that they got up to present was to share their ideas with each other. In the beginning, the idea was if you went to a TeachMeet, you were prepared to present as well as receive ideas. Now, it doesn't always happen that way. Now, presenters are organized in advance and set in stone, and the audience may not just put their hand up and present. But in the beginning, that is what happened. But there is a generosity of spirit in people who go to TeachMeet to share, maybe a little bit of showmanship as well. But it's lovely that teachers who have a good idea that has worked well, like for instance, I listened to Manel's exposition of the way he and his colleague use art earlier on. And that was absolutely perfect fodder for a TeachMeet, which I saw him present in London at the Bet Show. And then my huge curiosity is what makes somebody stand up and organize? Why do they go out of their way as a volunteer? Remember, this is a volunteer organization. Nobody gets paid for nothing. And it was lovely that the reason people seem to want to volunteer, it's almost like a moral purpose, that they want to create a space for the sharing that's looked for by TeachMeet community. So that gives me great heart for going into a very long winter here in Cavan of analysing data. That's just my very first look into the survey data. And that's an overview, John and colleagues, of what TeachMeet is. If you go to magsamond.com, that's my blog space. I kind of and put a search in for TeachMeet. I hang everything there for the moment informally. And one of the easiest places to find me is at magsamond on Twitter. But I guess what I should have pushed was hashtag TeachMeet, hashtag TeachMeets. That's where you will see the variety of what's going on in the world of TeachMeet. So I'm quite happy to be accosted by anyone to talk about this. We have a saying here, I will talk for Ireland. I will talk for the world about TeachMeet. But maybe for now, I will shut up and talk to John and see who else is hanging around. Stop sharing the screen.
So I'm here. So that was beautiful, and you went on like a professional journalist to give us the root of what TeachMeet was, and you kind of like start to show us all the processes, and it was really amazing how you've been able to say the history. What I was thinking next that you're going to do is that perhaps you're going to find an artist and we kind of like draw the history, and you present it to us. You remember what was being done at Scratch Bordeaux? That there was some. I think. Okay, sorry. There's an echo somewhere. I think it's from me.
Maybe if I mute my.
Okay. No. Yeah. I'm good right now. Exactly. So drawing something that shows the different positions and milestones of TeachMeet up to this present moment. And I really appreciate the fact that despite what the pandemic was, how deadly it was, there was also an other side to it. Yeah, and that's one of those things that you've talked about, in fact, that there was now an opportunity for a whole lot of boom to happen in terms of sharing and working together. And I think it's very, very important to not just educators, but for continuity to build capacity, enterprise, new ways of doing things that people collaborate, share, and do a lot of things. So what is the next order that you're thinking of right now with TeachMeet?
Well, before I go into the future, I want to pick up on something you said. You said the word opportunity and opportunistic. And that's a really, really, I'm finding that word a lot, because the opportunistic and the opportunity that came from pandemic close down could have been nothing, can't do nothing, we can't have a TeachMeet. But people didn't. They grabbed the opportunity to see, well, can we do this online? And can we, yeah, we'll have drawbacks, but can we make it a good experience for people? And one of the pluses was that I could go to Teach Meets virtually that I couldn't afford to go to in real life. I mean, I spent the morning at a wonderful gathering in Melbourne, the other
Oh,
side
of
of
the
the world.
world.
Yeah, like it was their nighttime. They had all done a hard day's work. They were sitting in their garage. They were sitting in their house. The children were running around them, but they were having their, they were doing their scheduled teach meet, and I was the observer, the fly on the wall. But that was kind of cool. That was so cool, because if it hadn't gone online, there was no, there was very little chance that I was going to go to Melbourne just for 2 hours for a teach meet. And if you remember back to, like, we did have that wonderful chance I've had the chance to go to teach meets in incredible places because they've been attached to a conference. So if you think of the teach meet you presented at in MIT in Boston, what a beautiful, beautiful, salubrious place to have a teach meet in. That was because we were both at a conference together.
Yeah,
We had a different reason. We had a different reason for being at the conference, but
absolutely.
our colleague from London via Scotland via London, Drew Buddy, the day he arrived, or in fact before he applied to the conference, to run a teach meet in an unconference form, and
Um,
that gave me huge joy, because it was the first teach meet that I had been involved in where we did have presenters from the global south. You were there, Rose
wow.
and the women
Yes, actually. From
um,
Tanzania.
from Tanzania were there. So that that was an opening out for me for the first time, because I had only been, involved in teach meets in Europe, and this just gave me such great joy, and everybody just. I think it may have been the first teach meet in Boston. It wasn't the first teach meet in America, but
Oh,
people really embraced it, and like we had. Another piece of huge joy to me was that I had the inventor of logo programming there to
oh,
observe.
yeah.
Cynthia Solomon was there, and that, you know that was just a joy to me. And the other unconference teach meets that we've had with the Scratch conference, all the keynote speakers turn up to either watch or join in or take part. So it's a very horizontal leveling thing.
Yeah.
There is no keynote at teach meet.
Hmm.
So John Okewale's name goes into the hat beside Cynthia Solomon's name. So whoever's name comes out first
Yeah.
is the next speaker. That's something I didn't address, was the random nature of teach meets, which some teach meets don't use. Teach meet style meetings don't use the random picker, but
Oh.
in a classic teach meet, everybody says, yeah, I'll do 2 minutes, I'll do 7 minutes, but you may not know when you're going to be on. It's a strange, quirky feature. I think it's from the Pechakucha Ignite world. It's a lottery. But John, you said something about the future, and actually, I'm going to say, come back to me in 2 years' time, because what I'm dealing with at the moment is a huge amount of personal opinion and data and answers from people, in
Okay.
which I did ask how they felt about the future of TeachMeet. And even if I didn't ask, they told me anyway. And I think it probably is at a crossroads. It probably is, with the pandemic, at an unexpected crossroads. And if you think about this, on the diary for the month of March in the UK, which was the only place I could find the data for, there should have been 30 teach meets, face-to-face teach meets,
Wow.
all cancelled within a day, all just cancelled. But now I see the online ones, they're resurfacing. People still want to meet and exchange ideas. So I think the future is a strange one. There's a type of sort of ownership and appropriation and sponsorship creeping in, which makes other people uncomfortable and happy. I think it needs to settle and find its place because it has no definition,
Mm,
no incorporation at all yet. It's still evolving and finding its shape. If you look at the wall behind me, it's covered in notes and ideas. And I also, because I'm a PhD student, I'm trying to look at it in the light of professional learning for teachers, which this is. It's probably in the same family as your teachathon, informal, but very, very, very professional.
mm. Thank you so much, and that was what I wanted to come up with next. That you drew a lot of connections between what TeachMeet has been and what Teachathon is actually emerging to kind of like showcase, and it's very very true because I kind of just looked at it that yeah, a lot of people have been during COVID, yeah, people have been doing things well in different forms. So, what about let's bring people together and let's talk about it and how can we share and learn from each other and kind of like okay, let's put so what perhaps time difference is that to make it more like a conference was yeah have a team for conference. But if you look at the tracks, I'm almost taking every aspect of education into the system. So it's like no one is left out. It's a conversation. Let's talk about it from TVET to higher ed to elementary to early childhood, whatever you think. Let's bring it together and let's look at how all of these things could actually influence what we are looking towards in the future. We've learned through the COVID we need to reflect through the learning, and that's where we can actually get some form of understanding and wisdom for us to kind of like move forward in the process. So that's just what and what I see at TeachMeet is kind of like in a relaxed manner. Everybody comes together, and even the people that didn't present at the conference will definitely come and say have something to say. So it was kind of like an open mic system. Bring your mic. Okay, do you have something to say? Oh yeah, let's hear you. And it was really, really graceful. It was fantastic, and people learned so much under those kind of relaxed environments. And yeah, that's Teach Me for You by Max.
Yeah,
So
there is a huge element of open mic, or what I think on TV they call it the comedy store idea, that you volunteer to speak. But if you go off point or you start to sell something, in the early days, in the very early days, there was a soft toy, a camel, and it used to get thrown at the speaker if the speaker for too long. I didn't. Yeah, that was a good one. But also the timing is agreed in advance.
yeah.
One of my colleagues, she does like a soccer referee. She has a red card, a yellow card, and a red card to see when your time is up. But the thing you said there about you needing to talk to each other is really important, and I think there could be sometimes too much stress on the presentations and not enough on the discussion in between, the space to
Mm,
to to speak back to the presenter, to ask them questions.
mm,
And TeachMeet attached to a conference can be really, really useful because a presenter can go and give a very short presentation at the TeachMeet, maybe the night before a conference, and people get a flavor then of, oh yeah, I want to go hear Ken Khan speak tomorrow
mm,
because that 3 minutes or that 7 minutes just gave me a flavor. And another thing you mentioned that's really, really sort of showing up now is some teach meets are becoming very, very narrowing their focus. They're just for primary school or they're just for science. So some are hiving off into almost like a community of practice, and some are still staying as a big mashup of what you mentioned there, K to grey, kindergarten right to adult learning, and right across the disciplines. And what I'm grappling with at the moment is, looking at the various unconference formats and not seeing that it's one or the other. All are good. And one thing you might be interested in, because I think you touched on it, was TeachMeet has had some interesting offspring. It has given rise to other formats, and one is very, very Scottish. It's called Pedagoo, which is what stuck with you in pedagogy this week. And maybe on Saturday we'll have a meeting to discuss it. But the most interesting one, the most like this, the closest to the Teachathon, is a movement called Brew Ed in the UK. So they take over a pub or a coffee shop for the day, and each person tells their story in turn, but everybody's just horizontal chilled, relaxed throughout the day. And again, that has moved online, and I spent one very sunny Saturday in June, I think, listening to stories and presentations and discussions from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5, 6 in the evening. Now, you didn't have to stay. People didn't stay for the whole thing, but it's just another indication that people do want to talk to each other, and they want to listen to each other. And that, what I said, that reciprocal sharing, rather than the very necessary professional development, which is, one direction. I present to you and you sit and listen, but people are hungry for the chats is what I call it, to chat. I don't know if we use that word a lot here, to chat with each other and to learn by hearing each other's experience.
That's very fantastic, and I appreciate the fact that you've been able to go into a lot of details about TeachMeet and the connections and all that. So thank you very much, Max.
You're very welcome, John. It's an honor
Right.
to be with you, dear.
Yeah, I'm so excited that Max showed up the Teachathon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
so,
another thing that I would say TeachMeet does, is it makes connections and it makes friends, and people speak of friends for life from it.
definitely.
I can definitely attest to that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and that's one of the reasons why I love to go to conferences anyway.
Well,
Because you.
hopefully we'll meet again at one when
Oh yes, exactly. After COVID,
when
so
all this
then we'll get
when all this
together.
when all this
Exactly.
stay at home is lifted from us.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly. Yeah. So. Thanks so much, Max.
You're very welcome,
Uh,
John.
we really appreciate your time.
Okay, I
And
look
we're
forward to hearing
excited.
everybody else.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. So our conference is still ongoing till.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just
I'm
approaching
going
it.
to leave the studio, John, now and go to the big
Yeah,
conference.
exactly. No
Okay.
problem.
Thank you so much,
Yes. So
John.
it's
Bye
a
bye.
pleasure. Have a nice day. Bye. Yeah. Thanks so much. Ew. Mo ti gbálẹ̀ fójò.